So take some time. I'm in between working a couple bowls, letting them cool off a little bit. But I thought I'd just give you my thoughts on the EL versus the NL before I do a more specific write-up on these. I'm going to talk about the ergonomics of it, just everything from the diopter to this the focus wheel, to how it feels in the hand. We'll go over the field of view and just the immersiveness of the actual optical system itself, and then we'll talk about the actual opticals, the actual optics. So, anyways, let's just dive in here on these things. I've held a lot of binoculars in my life. Everything from the recently the Zeiss SFs, Zeiss RFs, Leica Noctivids, Razer UHDs, and just top of the line stuff from all the different manufacturers, Nikon HGs, Conquest H. I keep going is what it comes down to, and even Swarovski EL and the SLCs, and I'm almost specifically talking EL because we are comparing the EL versus the NLs here. Every binocular this just feels so different than any binocular out there. The grip is just it's just perfect. It just feels like an extension of your hand when you're using it. And with that grip, offers a ton of just stabilization, which increases the picture to be sharper. Huge plus in my book there. When I was A/B testing, when I was still hunting on the EL versus NL, when I had them both on my chest, I'd use the ELs, and then I'd go to the NLs, just different. I'd do that for a couple days. Every time you picked up the ELs, it just felt like you had to manhandle it. When you had the NLs, they felt so natural in your hand. They feel like they weigh less too, frankly, and they actually weigh a little bit more. Not by much, but a little bit more on the actual binocular itself. So, just huge point of these ergonomics on this thing. It's just incredible. Kind of talk about so we also have the eye cup adjustments. There are 7 adjustment points, which is great because there's only 4 on the ELs. So you can really fine tune them. I wish the ELs would go in just a little bit more. With these, I can get it very precise, and we'll talk why that's very important later when we get into the field of view. So great on that. So we're also gonna focus wheel is just superb. It's extremely smooth, but has enough resistance where you aren't over or under. You're just, once you have it in focus, you're done. It's just so perfectly placed when you're one-handing these, when you're, say, walking through the woods with a bow and you're constantly picking them up to one-hand them. Incredible how easy it is to focus. ELs I find are a little bit harder, not by much, but just a little bit, where these are an improvement. Diopter, a big thing a lot of people have been talking about because they have changed the diopter adjustment on these. Before, you used to have a click and a lock system right here. Now, what we have here is one that actually, you can move it about. So I'll show you first. The diopter adjustment is underneath. Now, in the ELs, I'm a negative 1.25. But with the NLs, I'm a 0, and I'll talk about that in a second, why I find that to be correct. But the big thing people are wondering about is, well, am I going to be able to knock this off, the specific setting I find that's going to work for me? First off, if you're a 0, aka, what it is now is if your eyes are both the same prescription, so my doctor, I'm a negative 1 in both eye, so I don't, when I use contacts, I use the same exact prescription for both eyes. So luckily with the 0, there's actually a little indent in here. To move this, and I'm like really trying to move it. It's not going to move. It won't move unless you really pull down on it. And then from there, if you are, say, I don't know, let's say if you are negative like 1.25, the resistance, and I'm going to move these back and forth pretty good, and we'll take a look at them on the other side. They don't move. So I'm a strong believer in this. I think it's great. I'm guessing it's just added into the design of the actual optics itself. So I do like this over the EL. The other real why I really like it over the EL, and I just I can find the 0 stop that quick because I don't have to look at it and know it's 0 because there's a little indent. When I look through the ELs, I have to move it to negative 1.25 to get a perfect picture. Well, I mean, and I'm not an eye person, so I'd love if someone could explain this to me, but I shouldn't have to have a correction if both my eyes are the same. So I find that on the NL, I just have to go to 0 and I'm good, which makes perfect sense to me. I'm pretty sure that if you went to the eye doctor and said, hey, your correction on your left, on your right eye is +1, that should be what you should have to do to correct it. Or, if you're +2 on one eye and +1 on the other eye, you should only have to go +1. Which I think is pretty sweet how they did that. Armor-wise, it just, versus the EL, the armor just feels a little more supple, like a nice leather, but it also has the same grip. It's got the same level of just tackiness that just keeps you in the hand. You're not going to slip with this thing on. The design also has the actual armor of the optics itself to be slimmer. I'm not sure what they did this by design, but they're not as thick as the ELs are, which makes for a more svelte binocular and easier to hold. Probably cut down on weight, I'm not too sure. But the interesting thing I saw is that this wasn't just a choice for the NLs. If you actually look at the new 115 that's going into the X series spotters, it has the same thin ring around it as these. So something that Swarovski has definitely changed on their side. Lastly, the stud from the Outdoorsman screws in. I mean, my big complaint with the old one versus the EL was you'd have to get it press fit. You'd have to send it in for them to do it. This one, you take the cap off, real easy tools, a little bit of Loctite. There's not a ton of thread, which is why they have the Loctite, but you're able to screw it in, and I've been messing around with it on a tripod. I've actually used this as a stabilization point, hand-holding it, because I don't have the forehead rest soon. Don't have the forehead rest now. I think it's great. And then another added benefit that I like versus the ELs, in order to get it on the Outdoorsman stud, you have to move the your interpupillary distance, or basically you have to move these. If they're like that, you have to move them totally out in order to get it on, in, and then you readjust again. These, say if that's my interpupillary distance, I just slide them on and I'm good to go. So it's more efficient for sure. Anyways, that's ergonomics and kind of the whole binocular itself. Now let's get in the field of view and the immersiveness, which I think is the other huge selling point of these to me right now. When I look down the ELs, it's, we're all used to the same binocular. It's just, when you look through the binocular of the ELs, it's just, the optics are phenomenal. I mean, God, they're so nice. I tell everyone to buy ELs. I'm like, hey, you should just buy these. You will find game better. But we're so used to seeing that kind of, just that viewpoint of looking through a binocular. Looking through these, suddenly your perception has changed on what it should look like. Like they said, there's no borders. There are borders if you force yourself to look at them, but then you aren't really using the binocular. You're just trying to look at borders. It's so immersive. When I was still hunting, every time I was like looking at a wide screen, still hunting, this close by, we're trying to just look in 60 yards. Putting the ELs on, it just felt like I was looking at a barrel. Like I said, these just felt like I was looking at a wide screen. Huge selling point for me, especially as an archery hunter, archery elk hunter especially, where we're in close and we need as much vision as we can get. In the field of view, I mean, can't argue field of view. It's just amazing there. So definitely a huge plus for me over the ELs. Just having that, just total immersion in your environment, and having the ability to just see wider and see more image, see more of the landscape. Lastly, optics, the actual vision. If we were to take all this away and you're looking through one picture and looking at the other picture, take away field of view, and we're looking at the same kind of image. First off, just a little talk about field of view for a second. I don't notice that things look closer because I have a bigger field of view. I hear that some people actually see close. Seems like it seems closer, but to me, looking through these, nothing seemed closer looking through these. So, but on to the optical system, optics of these, and how they compare with sharpness, contrast, color, etc. So I guess the big question is are these better optically than the ELs? Slightly. The ELs have an amazing vision. The sight is just phenomenal. They've really mastered that art. They've upped the game just a little bit with the NLs, and I think a lot of it has to do with some of the coatings. Traditionally, all Swaro optics you see actually have this like green coating up top. And it's kind of a little more apparent here on the actual objectives and not the eyepieces. And I found these to be just a little bit better in about all of them. The biggest one, though, being sharpness, because of the ergonomics and how stable you're actually able to get these, which is, not a part of the optical system, but it's a part of the whole binocular, so, it's a holistic thing there. I was treated on the first night when I was A/B testing. I was camped on a ridge, and I was about ready to put it on a tripod and start looking into the valley floor to see if I can pick things off that the EL couldn't. I immediately had a cow alarm bark right behind me 5 minutes before last light. I was able to watch her for about 20 minutes, roughly, and just going back and forth between the NLs and the ELs. It was perfect. You definitely have a slight better light gathering capability on these. Contrast was better too. Out of those two things, I was able to pick out, by the 10 minutes after last light, I'm still looking at her, and it's dark. It's been smoky. It's no moon. It's dark, and I was able to pick out the various, slightly, but still over the ELs, I was able to pick out the variations in the color of her coat with the NLs. The ELs, when it was that dark, it was almost muted, and she was almost a silhouette. But with these, I was able to grab just a little bit more out of them. Would that mean differentiation in me shooting or not shooting on an animal? No, but they are slightly better in that system. Contrast was better on it. I did enjoy that. Like I said, sharpness is great. They're just a little bit better, which is great. But they are not, you're not going to see into the future with these over the ELs. There's only so much you can do to perfect a picture that was already pretty perfected vision-wise. And I don't know what else you guys want to see with these, but comparing a 2016 EL versus these NLs, it was close, really close. This is for field use. Maybe the resolution charts will say something different, and they probably will. But I'm talking about for field use on these optics. If I'm looking at tines on a bull, I wasn't able to perceive anything different that I couldn't pick up with the EL versus the NL. And I was able to see more and track the bull better. Oh yeah, for sure. That is a definite. But trying to pick off a little extra kicker maybe here or there. Is the resolution that much better? It's like it's really not, especially on a tripod. You'd be really nitpicking hairs here on the optical system. But the coatings do make it slightly better. I don't know what else they have inside this, but yeah, I mean, phenomenal optic. I kind of went into this with both of them saying, this is my own money. This isn't something that I wanted to, if honestly, if the NLs were not that much better than the NLs, there's no point in keeping them. I mean, these things are, $3,000, and a used pair of ELs now probably be, 18, maybe 1,600 with the price drop on them. But given the ergonomics, with how well it is to handhold and to have that much more stabilization in the woods, and I can't wait for the forehead rest to try that out too. Apparently it's supposed to be just another changing part, which has got me real excited. I think that'll seal the deal for me. But then to have the full immersion when you're looking out these optics, the wider field of view, I'm sold. I don't lose anything optically. I actually gain just a smidge more. I mean, that's the thing with, say, an RF. You gain, if you have an RF bino, you gain the ability to range find on your hand. It's, if you're helping someone as a guide, maybe that's amazing. You're able to give MOA adjustments on the fly. But the Zeiss RFs I've used quite a bit, and to me that's a night and day difference optically. These are slightly better optically by a hair, and like I said, you're nitpicking. But that's why I am most definitely probably going to be keeping the NLs, just the ergonomics and that immersionness, and you don't lose anything with your field of view. You don't lose anything optically. You gain just a little bit. It's a win for me. Only downfall with them, kind of part with this, is that people talk about a glare. You can see it in the bird form. You do get a glare if you don't set these up right. If you say crank these all the way out, look through them, you're gonna get some glare. If you kind of really push them in and you just push your eyes into them, you're gonna get a glare. You've got to find the right adjustment point, and for me, I messed around with it. I thought it was 4, but it's actually 5, adjustment 5. So all the way in, and I go out 4 clicks on them, and I have my perfect sight picture that I can see everything with them. So just really make sure that you get that down, because if not, you will experience some iller effects. I'd say that's the one downside to having that super wide field of view, and just the lack of quote unquote borders in the NLs. So yeah, ELs, you can crank them and get a perfect sight picture. There's no loss there. So there you go. It's further one fault there, for me anyway. Other than that, everything else is just a win. So all right, thanks for listening, Rock Slide. Appreciate it. I'll have a better write-up